Hello and welcome to Hearted Divination and Astrology. As I've mentioned in all my previous videos on this asteroid series, there are thousands of asteroids within our asteroid belt in this solar system, and it's located in between the orbits of Jupiter and Mars. In this video, we're going to be looking at the asteroid Ceres. And Ceres takes 4.6 years to orbit the Sun, just like the other asteroids. And it's been classified as a dwarf planet. It is one of the largest of the 20 asteroids discovered so far. It was discovered by an Italian astronomer named Giuseppe Piazzi in 1801, and he named it after the Roman goddess Ceres. Now, there were quite some significant events that took place in 1801. For instance, Thomas Jefferson was elected the US president, and the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Ireland was established, because previously they were seen as separate nations. And we also had Toussaint Louverture, the Haitian revolutionist who declared Haiti independent. And there was also the Treaty of Fort Adam, which was an agreement made by the Choctaw Native American Indians and the United States government. Now, all these concerns were about nation building, making decisions for the betterment of society and its people, supposedly. But Ceres is the deity of harvest and corn. She was revered for her service to mankind. She was the gift of harvest and a reward for the cultivation of the soil. She was considered the great provider by the Roman people, a provider for the nation. Remember, Ceres is the daughter of Saturn and Ops, and also the sister of Vesta, Juno, Jupiter, and Pluto. And Ceres had one daughter, Proserpine. And the story goes that Proserpine was kidnapped by Pluto, the god of the underworld, to be his bride. And although Ceres tried to find her, she had already disappeared into the earth. And Ceres was infuriated when she had learned that Jupiter had actually given Pluto the permission to marry Proserpine. So, she was so upset. Ceres was just heartbroken. She went to live in the world of men and disguised herself as an old woman. And from that time on, she prevented all the plants and vegetation from growing. So there was a famine in Rome. And Jupiter made several attempts to try and get Ceres to change her heart and mind, but she was adamant. So he had no choice but to try and return Proserpine, and he sent for her. However, Proserpine had already been given something to eat by Pluto, and the omen goes that anyone who eats in the underworld can never leave forever. So Proserpine was subjected to having to return to the underworld every year for 4 months. So Proserpine would return in spring and spend time with her mother until autumn, and then she would have to return to the underworld. And during that time, nothing would grow. So this is why the plants lose their leaves and the seeds remain dormant underground until Proserpine returns again to see her mother during the spring. Now Demeter, whom precedes her, is her counterpart in Greek mythology. She is credited with teaching humans how to grow, preserve and prepare grain and corn. She is also the goddess of harvest, grain and fertility. She is one of the 12 Olympian gods that live on Mount Olympus. Both the sister and wife of Zeus. Remember, Zeus has 7 immortal wives. And here we have a familiar story with an attachment between Demeter and Persephone as mother and daughter respectively. A young girl who comes of age and falls in love with the dark god of the underworld, known as Hades. Previous to both the Greek and Roman mythology, 4 more older deities, such as Nisaba from Sumeria, who was worshipped in the city of Ulma as a grain goddess in the early dynastic period. Sometimes depicted as a single stalk of grain, or as a woman with long curled tresses, rather like dreadlocks, with a horned headdress supporting ears of wheat and a crescent moon, and often holding dates. And this has been seen on a fragment of stone from a vase exhibited in the British Museum. The other equally ancient deity is Neper, the Egyptian or Khemetic god of grain, a child god with a female counterpart, Nepit, who is also a grain goddess, symbolizing the process of removing seeds of barley or wheat from their inedible tusks. Neper, as the Khemetic child god of grain, is the son of Renenu-Tet, the goddess of nourishment and harvest, and Sebek is his father, the crocodile head god. In other words, Neper epitomizes wealth brought by barley, sometimes known as emmer wheat, and corn crops. Grain was extremely important in Khemetic culture because it was a diet staple, a main source, and grain was used as currency for bartering instead of money, and the excess grain was used for trade. Towards the end of the Khemetic Empire, corn was exported to Rome to feed the people. After outlining the purpose of all the 4 deities, Nisaba, Neper, Demeter and Ceres, there are clearly commonalities. The notions of grain and corn and harvest as provisions for the nation. As nurturers, the deities are responsible for the sustenance of the people. They are known as the great providers. And Ceres in Roman mythology is beloved for her service to mankind, a true caregiver. Her festival, Ceralia, was celebrated on the 19th of April, and Ambarvalia, the agricultural fertility rite, held at the end of May. And she is often portrayed holding a scepter or a farming tool in one hand and a basket of flowers or grain in the other. She is even seen wearing a garland made from ears of corn. Now, wherever we have Ceres in our natal charts, this can be calculated on astro.com or any other website that does birth chart calculations. But wherever we have the asteroid Ceres in our natal charts, it demonstrates our relationship with our offspring, and if we are not parents as yet, it shows the love that we have for anyone else apart from a romantic connection. It could be the caregiving towards a pet, a plant, or anything else that requires our undivided attention. It's all about our sense of security, fulfillment, and practical needs. You know, there are themes of unconditional love, devotion, attachment, loss, and gains. But most importantly, Ceres is the patron for rewards and abundance for our given efforts. You reap what you sow. So it's about what we can manifest or materialize in our lives. And this also relates to self-care and the care of others. I'm going to look at Ceres in the earth signs. What can be materialized? What can be manifested in terms of the love we have for ourselves, the care that we have for others, and what we put into our lives and the returns from it. So now let's get into the houses. If you have Ceres in Taurus in the first house, although you are strong and steadfast and sure of yourself, even somewhat demanding, you are not threatening. And these said qualities are what you admire in others. You know, the attention of flattery you receive feels good, but it's not necessary, for all your motivation stems from within. And overall, caring for yourself means the pursuit of pleasures. What pleases me, what feels good, what's nice. And if it's not foreign foods, then it's fine garments, or spas are exotic vacations where deliverance is found in paradise. And depending on where Mars is situated in your chart, this could be impulsive behavior or simply an inspiration that remains fixed throughout life. In return, you will do the same for others, as you like to gift, spoil, and treat those around you. Your caring is purely demonstrative, and your considerate actions silence words. You are invigorated by solid, permanent connections between people. You are a friendship material, easygoing, loyal, with a high degree of integrity, if you want to be. Let's enjoy, we only live once would be a typical of those with this placement. In your mind, by living life to the fullest is the best achievement, especially if you endured hard work and commitment. This sort of narrative is a story about security. The more evolved souls understand that Ceres in the first house of Aries often reveals hidden feelings, thoughts, old habits from the past, and you are aware of the head to strive for something much higher, to transmute those desires into the much needed development of your soul. It's less about feeling and more about being, and this requires willpower to turn away from the pursuit of pleasures. You have to find another reason to live, and showing the world that you are a provider and survivor is a blessing that comes with its inherent problems. And if you have Ceres in Taurus in the second house, the house of money has you pondering the future. You work relentlessly. Giving up is not an option. Ceres gives you the capacity for endurance in the name of fortune. Agreeable aspects with Jupiter certainly brings abundance, and the focus is to create a legacy for loved ones. Generational wealth is established through real estate, assets, beneficiaries from trusts, sound investments. You may be given a financial education that prepares you and your following offspring for economic stability. Ceres is often associated with the zodiac sign Taurus, where the senses of physical touch and emotional feeling can predominate the personality, but not in a sentimental manner. So you value whatever can be felt, from the softness of fine silk to the rhythms of mellow music that move you. Accumulating possessions is another possible tendency. You cannot bear material misfortune. For you, ownership is very important. And after all, building a firm foundation serves your best interests and for those you truly care about. If Ceres is inflicted, and if we take note of the activity that's taking place in the 6th and 10th houses, then attempting to maintain financial consistency proves to be challenging. Not that a bountiful life cannot be a reality, it's just not going to be easy. And struggling to adapt to a changing economy and too stubborn to embrace new ideas is to blame for financial stagnation. But Ceres will encourage you to avoid all complications. It's just knowing what to do and what works. And if you have Ceres in Taurus in the 4th house, here we have Venus and the Moon. And this ought to be a positive experience in relation to family life, your roots and community. And even if you were raised in a very loving environment as a child, or you was a primary caregiver, which was done wholeheartedly without question or doubt, it could be for children, parents, or extended family, or a friend. The Moon is exalted in Taurus, and also the ruler of the 4th house, Cancer, And as a sensitive person, you can be a gentle soul, sometimes overprotective, especially for the ones you love. And you are the doting mother or father, the supportive brother or sister, or the child that never disobeys their parents or guardians. The opposite could be true if all the virtues just mentioned, if Saturn is positioned in the 4th house too. That's along with Ceres, in conjunction with Ceres. You will still be faithful and reliable, however. The responsibility is tiresome and burdensome, and an outward affection is not so forthcoming. Saturn located here is also an indication of growing up without a paternal figure or any male role models at all, and ideas around having to cultivate inner strength through loss and despair, for example, inability to produce children or the loss of a child due to death, including traumatic past experience such as being uprooted from your community and everything you have ever known. Your subconscious mind needs and experiences are going to be very much influenced by your moon placement with Ceres in the 4th house. And if you have Ceres in Taurus in the 7th house, here we have Venus and Venus, because Venus rules Libra and also rules Taurus. So you're going to be a principle person, old school values that seldom change, regardless of age, and the likelihood of imposing deep instilled opinions on others is inevitable, particularly in those one-to-one relationships. Your children, if you have them, friends, employers, associates, or business partners. You want to live by example and do your bit to contribute towards society, creating an harmonious world. You couldn't care less about contemporary standards. Manners and respect never become outdated. And as far as you are concerned, it is the attitude of an accountable person who honors themselves and others. You are unlikely to jeopardize genuine relationships, understanding that honesty, loyalty, and willingness are diamonds worth mining. And blessed with the sound interpersonal skills and diplomatic in approach, the ultimate aim is to maintain the level vibes. A good reputation is far better than money. And here we have Taurus ruled by Venus, and Libra's ruler too. So Venus and Venus meet head on. And here Ceres bestows you with alluring qualities which effortlessly attracts companionship, love, and people well connected. You definitely keep it real. And the fixed earth within the house of cardinal air, masculine and feminine polarities meet to bring balance, stability. And if your north node happens to be in Cancer, the soul is on a path of learning to nurture and care for the self and whoever. And the calling for this lifetime is to gain wisdom regarding relationships. Be less judgmental and more accepting of other people, and therefore being able to live with yourself. If Ceres is negatively aspected in the 7th house, unrequited love may be an issue. Broken relationships that have to be healed due to loss may be also another experience. And if we have Ceres in Taurus in the 10th house, you are someone that is practical in pursuit of aims and goals and ambitions. And this is a responsibility that cannot be left to chance with Taurus in the house of Capricorn. Here, self-care translates as materialism. And so many people and contacts in your network are the right ones to propel any projects. Starting from absolutely nothing, the potential for you to accumulate and build wealth is likely, if that's your wish. And the ability to buy time in a consistent, purposeful manner reaps rewards and requires dedication. Although on the surface you appear dispassionate, there is an undeniable faithfulness about you. And Ceres in this position is typical of those taking on inheritance of family or company. And if your Saturn is in Pisces or Gemini, then such hereditament would be viewed as a frustration or something that needs consideration before any agreements finalize. Work which involves the arts, design, perfumery and scents and floristry, etc. could be lucrative. Investments in collector's items or future profits is another hobby or business that may be to your liking. You appreciate good quality, longevity, and know how to preserve priceless possessions, worthwhile the contemplation. And as an employer, you are a reasonable boss and the number one employee in your team at work. If you are a parent, the idea of your children respecting your authority fills you with more pride than simply loving you. Overall, your childhood experience could have been very difficult with parents that had to be, what we could say, appeased. You had to win their love because their love was so conditional, and good deeds were praised whilst mistakes were severely scolded. Leniency was never practiced. So that is quite a serious childhood experience with an afflicted Ceres in that house. So we have Ceres in Virgo. Ceres in Virgo in the first house. Just to remind you, Ceres is exalted in Virgo. And on the first impression you are neat, everything in order you see fit. And there is a self-belief that is unshakable, and you get straight to the point when expressing an idea. You know exactly how to conduct yourself when it comes to getting what is needed. And acquaintances and associates perceive you as selfish and conceited, but those who know you better are familiar with your tendency to be efficient. Here Ceres takes charge of your capability to be assertive, especially mentally, and the speech is direct and at times tactless, and this speech is effective regardless of whether the responses were well received or not. If your Mars is unfortunately in Leo, that confidence will indicate arrogance, when really Ceres is looking out for her interests. After all, no one wants to be undermined. And you prefer to make decisions and judgments autonomously, without pressure or cohesion. You have no problem with other recommendations, providing they're beneficial to yourself and those that matter. Ceres in the first house is particularly about self-image, self-expression, and self-fulfillment. As a parent or guardian, leading by example is viewed as far more impactful than being a dictator, since some children only imitate the adults surrounding them. And Saturn placed in Pisces can mean that your father figure had higher expectations for you than himself, or raised in a disciplined environment with regimental parents or boarding school education. No matter what people think of you or how you feel about yourself, with Ceres in Virgo in the first house. Remember, you are your worst critic. And if you have Ceres in Virgo in the third house, Ceres in Virgo requires knowledge, loves reading and gaining new skills. For you to learn is to be well informed. Nourishing the brain with all sorts of information keeps the mind preoccupied and prevents Alzheimer's in later years. For no time for melancholy moments or depression, with Mercury being the ruler for both Gemini and Virgo, low emotions are not entertained. In fact, put aside, since logic, rationale, and reasoning refuses to tolerate it. And as an eloquent speaker with superb written skills, communication is utilized as a weapon to persuade, convince, and defend all motives. Obviously, journalism, publishing, script writing, etc., the obvious avenues as professions. And the ability to articulate thoughts through speech and writing is certainly a cut above the rest. You are a living testimony that the pen is mightier than the sword, or should I say the word is mightier than the sword. And the close analysis of details and the memory able to recall the past and more recent events prepares you for self-representation in a court of law. However, if Mercury has disagreeable configurations with Ceres or positioned in Pisces, for example, then communication is not so sharp or even less coherent, at worst, intelligible. And as a general rule, Ceres in Virgo in the home of Gemini calls for someone well-spoken or very vocal or even argumentative. So for those of you who are not engrossed in knowledge, community gossip and tabloid type news, or are updated on a regular basis, what else is worth your critique and condemnation? And Venus, the esoteric ruler of Gemini, must learn that communicating with love is undeniable and just as important as intellectual understanding others is equally important as being understood yourself. So if I say that again, Venus, the esoteric ruler of Gemini, must learn that communicating with love is undeniably just as important as intellectual understanding others is equally important as being understood yourself. Ceres in Virgo in the 6th house. Ceres here is placed in the home of its exaltation, Virgo. And Mercury is the ruler of Virgo, as you should know. And this is when scrutiny is at its finest. Your very existence is heavily dependent upon this absolute lifestyle. If you are not a remote worker with flexibility, then your life's work is a duty similar to a retreat. In other words, your service to mankind is carried out with humility and grace. Quality time for yourself, the opportunity to let your hair down or have a moment of solitude is not taken for granted. And as a workaholic by nature, Ceres in Virgo makes you a conscientious towards health. Not only being physically active but mentally agile also. And rather than following fancy fads, you find logical, straightforward approaches which are rational. For example, instead of traveling 30 minutes to the nearest gym, you spend the exact time doing yoga at home and run to a local supermarket for groceries. By doing this, you save time and money without compromising fundamental exercise and beneficial nutrition, and sometimes, and most importantly, time. If your Mercury is in Pisces, possibly as an Aquarius, Pisces or Aries sun sign, Ceres in Virgo does not always render logical deduction. Any order or productivity in relation to self-development is thwarted, or fucked up should I say, by fastidious routines and habits that don't meet objectives. For example, hours of dedicating time to researching healthy practices and ideas, constantly replacing one regime with another, or even more defeating, just cannot make up your mind. And you will be drawn to the healing professions and intrigued by all types of therapy, from massage therapists to life coach, and people are humbled by your presence once the radars pick up different signals and draw from your polar opposite, Pisces, who understands universal acceptance by leaving behind the compulsion to over-examine. Because the lesson for you here is that the moon, who is your esoteric ruler for Virgo, must learn to trust the subconscious mind. Not everything is brought about through analysis, research, and objective thinking. And if you have sevenths in Virgo in the 7th house, here we have Mercury and Venus. And Ceres epitomizes fairness and equality within companionship, friendship, fellowship, whatever you want to call it ship. But parenthood is probably the best gift of life, and children, regardless of age, are treated in the most cordial way. Separation from loved ones would literally kill you, and your liberal parenting style does not mean being an incapable disciplinarian. It's just that you are beyond reasonable, extremely emphatic, with a rare compassion, and this attribute is afforded to many people in your life's journey. All you ask for is to be respected and appreciated, which obviously applies to romantic relations too. And as long as the standards are realistic, success in love is likely. How lucky. But Ceres in Virgo in the 7th house compromises agony aunts, doulas, mentors, and advisors. And in terms of business, when you hear someone say, "It has been a pleasure doing business with you," is a fact and not courteousness. But discordant energies between Mercury and Venus tells a very different story. Fulfilling the heart's desires becomes impractical due to idealism that fosters unrealistic expectations. And this disconnects you from true feelings. Over-rationalization prevents the natural, spontaneous flow of love. Because here, Uranus is the esoteric ruler of Libra, which is the 7th house, and the power to create and destroy must be used wisely. So it's all about using our discernment, not necessarily trying to be perfect or meet ideals. And if you have Ceres in Capricorn, Ceres in Capricorn in the 1st house. So here we have Saturn and Mars. And one look at you, everyone gathers that you will not entertain nonsense. Ceres and Saturn in the 1st house knows how to take care of themselves, both financially and physically. And you have the force and discipline that can move mountains. If you need something done, then you are the right person for the job. There is a tremendous self-assertiveness, which is second to none, and likely to follow a hard-working ethic at some point in life. Too many goals, it's inevitable. So the lethargic and the laid back better back off. You have no time for wasters. You prefer to dress casual, but know when to upscale if need be. A few of you present impeccably 24/7, but no matter what you choose to wear, the authoritative air surrounding you commands attention at least. If Ceres is afflicted by a hard square with Saturn or directly in opposition with Mars, then self-love or even extending love to others is delayed, because that's how reserved you are. And rather than being self-assertive, you're instead self-conscious and concerned about what people think of you as a consequence. You come across defensive beneath your cautious exterior. And there is a serious person worth getting to know. I mean, if you have Ceres in Capricorn in the second house, the house of money, here we have Saturn and Venus. And security is paramount. As a shrewd business person, you are a person that's solid in business, with the expectation of future returns. So whilst young, practical plans will be carried out in preparation for the future, here Ceres is in Capricorn, within the second house of Taurus, plenty of earth, one side cardinal and the others fixed, respectively. So you're talking about a really earthly placement here with Ceres. So outwardly, your attitude towards money is quite conservative. And nevertheless, there are moments when lavish purchases are made, well, within good reason. And Ceres wants to bestow material comforts. However ingrained habits or perceptions about wealth can be, then there is this denial for potential growth. You value financial independence and autonomy. Without it, true independence could never be achieved. And Ceres inspires gravitation towards certainty, safety, and guarantees. And it's not solely about materialism, but surety. And if your Venus is in either Capricorn or Taurus, then status is priceless, because you get more opportunities to rub shoulders with the affluent and hopefully raise your own prestige or profile. Unfortunately, if Ceres has challenging planetary aspects with energies difficult to integrate, then the goddess of harvest becomes mean-spirited, cold, and uncertainty, insecurity or lack is envisaged. This is a Five of Pentacles card in the tarot deck sort of situation, where a failure to sow seeds is the cause. And neither do you believe in yourself or think that you're deserving of anything, and disappointment is constantly anticipated. The limitations you set for yourself can lead to depression. And if you have Ceres in Capricorn in the 5th house, the stern, contemplative temperament of Capricorn in the 5th house proves arduous for those trying to start a family. If fertility is not the problem, then it's other strenuous factors hindering family life. And if you do have children, the relationship with them is strange. The solemn atmosphere at home is stifling, because you are a parent that seldom lightens up, and fun-loving is not your forte. On a more uplifting note, Ceres wants to comfort and nurture others through creativity. From a playgroup coordinator for children to an entertainer, whether that be an artist, singer, dancer, comedian or writers. Basically, it is an outpouring of your inner nature, eager to express and amuse. And any romantic liaisons or amicable friendships are acquired through leisurely outings. For the most part, self-pride and aspirations towards success leads to talents becoming an enterprise. For the less fortunate, a difficult Saturn placement can debilitate creative expression or represent a challenging or unhappy childhood upbringing. But the esoteric ruler for the 5th house is Neptune. So escapism and getting away from reality is part of the caring. And that entertaining personality is living your life on the stage. A moment to get away from the reality of everyday living. And Ceres in Capricorn in the 8th house. Ceres in this house overcomes wounds due to adversity. This is the loss of a child, separation from any significant other, including the loss of a job, business or lifestyle. Ceres is the guardian during the phases in life that calls for healing and renewal. The emotional strength and control of Saturn and Pluto combined aids to surpass bereavement. The death of a loved one is often a difficult hurdle to climb. Or having to face bankruptcy or other financial hurdles. But this is a position for those who are inclined towards taboos, having insatiable desires, a formidable sexuality set to devour or mesmerize all that dares to come near. And caring for self beckons self-development and self-empowerment. And many enchantress and necromancer and occultists in general are found with this placement. Whenever a situation deems transcendence as a necessity, especially to go beyond the limitations of the everyday mundane, then other realities are possible, and most often these realms of assistance in acquiring either material wealth and or extensive spiritual insight or knowledge, or both, can be liberating. A badly aspected Ceres in Capricorn in the 8th house can be self-destructive, caused by obsessions and outbursts of violence in which control becomes totalitarian and disempowerment follows as a consequence because things have become out of control. And if we have Ceres in Capricorn in the 12th house, here we have Neptune, Jupiter and Saturn. And in the house of sacrifice, Ceres has a longing for charitable works, mindful of the unfortunate, a comforter for the institutionalized, and a duty for higher good. An experience of abundance in spirit where love expands boundaries and embraces all that is. At the other extreme, the restrictions of the present life due to old karmas presents itself as a form of self-undoing. You know, those moments in life that find yourself at that lowest point. You've lived with the decisions that you had made. And unlike the 8th house, where the focus is self-empowerment, here universal love is the key. Ceres is more capable of caring for others than self, since the influence of Neptune and Saturn does not serve personal interests, but collective ones too. But this is not done necessarily with practicality or logic. Instead, for those more evolved souls, you surpass all of the known. with a disciplined imagination able to manifest miracles. Ceres in the 12th house in Capricorn is compelled to follow tradition. There is no distinction between you and your ancestors. Daily acknowledgement or worship keeps you in alignment to receive divine guidance, protection from covert enemies, and the realm to share your many secrets. If Jupiter is in a dignified position in your natal chart, any time or moment you become downhearted will never be for too long. Even a mental breakthrough even a mental breakdown is a breakthrough in disguise. And Pluto is the esoteric ruler of Pisces, the 12th house. So transmutations from the old into a new way of being is inevitable with Ceres here. And in Capricorn terms, it's a reformation of what no longer serves. Ceres placed in Capricorn requires care in the areas of life where limitations or restrictions are perceived. And Saturn forces you to deal with the dilemma and find resolutions. Unsolved problems from past lives come to the surface, providing an opportunity to put them in order.